All right, so many of you out there are probably trying to figure out what exactly you want to do. Maybe you're stuck in a job that you don't want to be in. Maybe you're in a relationship that you're really just trying to figure out, how do I make this better? How do I get out of it? And you're just trying to create the life that you want. Well, tonight I have a guest who has had a great experience with this, understands what it means to have to make a bold move, knowing when you feel stuck and how to get out of it and what that emotion is. So I'd like to welcome to the Life Renewal Podcast, Ryan Allen. Ryan, pleasure to have you.
How's it
Thank you
going?
for coming on and taking the time with me, buddy.
Of course, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to do is just kind of get a take on, the experience you had, your story. I know that you told me about how you had worked, at a grocery store and you were working seven
Yeah.
days a week and how managing that and just kind of feeling like there was, just overwhelmed with, the amount of time you were spending and not really getting that personal time for yourself. So if you
Yeah.
could, for the listeners out there who are just looking for some hope and light at the end of the tunnel, knowing that, there's a move that they can make, they just got to figure out how to do it. What was that experience like for you? So if you could tell us what it was like for you,
Yeah.
working all that time and what was your breaking point?
Yeah. I think the breaking point was ultimately just kind of looking around and ultimately seeing everybody around me kind of like stagnant.
Hmm.
There was real no growth opportunity for me, I felt any longer within the organization that I was with. And it was just one of those experiences that, I'm a very observant person for the people around me. So I was looking at other people and just kind of seeing if I wanted that life. I was putting myself almost in their shoes. Like, you know, did I want that experience for myself? And I was grinding. I worked retail for, it was 10 years basically.
Wow.
I did worked my way up into a management role in retail, and I knew there had to be more out there for me. I knew there that like I had a kind of like an epiphany where I almost wanted to go on these epic journeys. In my head I was going on them all the time, like just going on all these epic journeys of like like manifesting what life could look like in a way that for me, kind of stepping back in hindsight, I kind of drew up the most uncomfortable position I could put myself in as a person, because I was the person I am now and the person who I was then are two completely different people. And basically what I did was I wanted to get into a situation that kind of made me uncomfortable. It was like that almost that driving factor of like, what can I do? Like, I'm so comfortable in my role now. What can I do to get out of this comfort zone and really like find that growth zone almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And how uncomfortable was that for you? Like, did you have to hit like a rock bottom point? Did you just finally say, okay, it's time? Like, what was that
Yeah.
like for you?
It was about a 3.5, maybe 4 year process, honestly.
Wow.
It was me coming to the realization that change needed to be made, number one. But then it was just small micro thought process changes. It was slow, methodical, like, okay, if this happens, then will this happen? It's like I went through the motions of really trying to figure out almost, again, very analytical mind. It's just like my brain was just like, okay, if X, then Y. Like it was
Right.
just if this, then this. So for me, it was just stepping through that sequence of first realizing something had to change. But then after
Mhm.
that, it was like, okay, what needs to change? Like, what about me as a person needs to change? But also, too, what about my situation needs to change? And from there, it was just like a gradual evolution of like, again, I had all these epic, pictures in my head of what was going to happen and what it was going to look like. But at the end of the day, I really had no idea. I just knew that, I just started moving on ideas. It was just like that forward momentum forward of moving towards something and not really like trusting whatever it turned into. And I think that principle kind of, carried me through that whole entire process, because you have all those people in your life that are telling you like, oh, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to, you
Right.
work here. It's going to be, this is going to be your life forever. And I'm just like, absolutely not. So that's kind of the journey, that the thought process and kind of the systems behind that.
Yeah, so it sounded like it sounds like you really staged it in your mind. Like it's almost
Yeah,
like you went through every scenario in your mind first before you actually, acted on it in real life. So you kind of
100%.
created that video. So I guess when it came down to it, you were already prepared because you went through it in your mind so
Yeah.
many times. Does that sound right?
Yeah, exactly right. And again, I didn't know what it was going to look like. Like I had all these
Hmm.
different things going on in my head, where it was like I didn't at that point I didn't really care what it turned into, as long as it got me to the
Yeah.
end goal, which the end goal was getting into a different position, getting into a different role, getting into a new opportunity, and figuring out a way to put myself in that position to get that opportunity. So,
Right. I think we sabotage ourselves when we try to think what the end outcome is supposed to look like and we try to control what the process is
for
because
sure.
then it's almost frustrating because as human beings, we only see a limitational process where if you just trust the process and you just go through that intuitive action of taking that leap of faith, a lot of
Yeah.
times things just kind of work out. And it sounds like you found that out in your own way, that just taking that leap of faith led you the right direction. I'm interested to know, you said that you needed to change, like things about you
Yeah,
needed to change.
for sure.
What were some things that were really recognizable that you said, I have to change
Yeah.
this about me if I want to get to here? What does that look
Yeah.
like?
I was a very still am, just a very anxious person overall, I feel like. But
Mhm.
ultimately it was just me being in my head constantly about like, oh, you're not good enough to do that. Like just always downplaying
Mm.
the inevitable like negative chatter in the back of your head. You have that little voice in the back of your head that's always telling you those negative things. But I feel like for me, like I loved being by myself. I loved being, I didn't like putting myself out there. I needed to work on vulnerability and just really like trusting people and being able to be open with people and trusting the good in people. So it's just one of those things for me where I had, almost like character flaws, right? So I had to really just like work on, you know, I 10 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you in front of a camera, for you to publish this to a lot of people. Like that wouldn't
Uh,
have been me. I would have been, someone who more of an observer rather than a participant, if that makes sense.
mm, that makes a lot of sense, and
Yeah.
that's a big deal. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
hard for a lot of people to do, so the fact that you did it, I mean, dude, kudos to you. I have nothing but respect 'cause that is a
Yeah.
big leap. That's a
I
huge
appreciate that.
transition to make in your life, yeah. So, I think when it comes down to it, you also didn't know what to expect from it, so you were about to leave a position that I'm guessing paid well, I'm guessing
Yeah.
it supported your life,
Yep.
and you just left it? Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I did step down from the management role, and I did a regular role for a while, outside of management. But basically, yeah, I just up and kind of left, and
Wow.
I went into the store manager's office, and basically was just like, here's my situation. This is kind of what I'm feeling, and I feel like I need to go do this. And I also felt like I didn't have a story, like if that makes sense. Like I didn't, I was
Mhm.
born and raised in the same place, around the same people my entire life. I didn't have the experience that other people had. I didn't travel a lot. I'd been to Georgia and North Carolina and stuff like that, but I wanted to see the country and I wanted to explore and I wanted to. Everyone's talking about how bad the world is and how scary it can be and all this stuff, and I wanted to go see that for myself. I was like, it can't be that bad, right? So
Yes.
I bought a 1995 Ford camper van and I beelined it and I traveled for, I would say, on and off, for probably 7, 8 months. And during that
Wow.
process, it was just like a it was almost like I felt like it was a soul searching journey for me to figure out what was the next step. Like there was that purgatory time of in between jobs that I needed to rediscover who I was and kind of reconnect with myself almost.
Right. That I mean, that's amazing, the fact that you were
Yeah.
able to do that. I think someone watching this video is probably thinking to themselves, "Okay, how did you support yourself? Like, you left the job that was basically
Hmm.
supporting your life. You it sounds like you didn't really have a plan after you
Nope.
walked into the manager's office and
Nope.
said, that's it for me." How
Yeah.
did you not have a panic attack? Like, what did you do
I
to make
did. I
sure
had
that you were
several.
gonna be okay? You had several, and that's fair.
Yeah, I
That's
I
fair. I
had
can only
several.
imagine that that's the real thing. So what did you do to make yourself feel like everything is going to be okay? Like, I can do this. I can take 7 to
Yeah.
8 months. I can get on the road. Like, how did you
Mhm.
work that out?
Yeah, so basically it started with me just telling myself and kind of framing in my own mind like if I run out of money, I know I'm always willing to work somewhere. Like
Hmm.
nothing is beneath me to where I can go clean toilets. I can go, flip burgers. I can go somewhere like someplace to find a job to support myself. And that kind of was what initially drove me because of my work ethic and how I carry myself is I wanted like nothing is beneath my skill set essentially. So
Mhm.
I was
Right.
thinking about going in and doing a lot of farm work on farms. I was thinking about, making like they have campgrounds where you can go and do like camp stays and work at the campground and stay for free, things like that. But ultimately, what ended up happening is I ended up getting very early on into a 401k, and I was very fortunate to be able to draw off of that 401k. And, someone very early in my career at the retail store pulled me aside and said, "Hey, man, I want to get you into this ROA of this 401k program. It's super important." And around that time, I think I was only like maybe 20, 21. And had he not pulled me aside and made me set up that 401k for myself, I don't think any of this is possible, honestly.
Wow.
So,
So it
yeah.
almost sounds like things were being put in the making for you before you even knew any of this was ever gonna happen. Like, there were
Yeah, you could say that.
synchronicities that were just kind of forming this very moment for you, and that's
Yeah.
that's kinda cool to think about it that way,
Yeah, for sure.
But,
You could definitely
okay,
say that.
so yeah, so you're on the road 7, 8 months, like, what did you end up flipping burgers? Like, did you have to do anything like that to support yourself? And what did you learn about you during that time frame?
Yeah, I didn't ultimately have to seek work for the time that I
Good.
traveled, although I did think I was gonna be gone longer than 7 to 8 months. And it happened in stints. So I was traveling for 2 months, and then I'd come back, and then I'd leave
Mhm.
and go for another 2 months, and then come back. Um, but ultimately, I think the biggest thing that changed that I realized is that how self-sufficient I could be, and how isolation, it really is something to be said about being alone. And
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be for super extended periods of time. Like it could be, an hour. But
Right.
for me, like I spent 7 days out in the redwood forest in my van, and this is probably not the best thing to say, but I was living off like hot dogs and apples and just stuff that you don't have to cook in a van. You can
Yeah.
just cook on a grill and just eat apples. But I didn't see a soul for 7 days, and I was
Oh.
out there, and it was just like a peace kind of came over me, where it was like just let go, like just figure out a way to let go of everything and just try to become a better person, like in every situation you find yourself in. Because there was also a time when I was traveling where the van broke down, and that was a very humbling experience for me because it was in 1995, and they don't really fabricate those parts anymore for those vehicles. So my alternator basically overheated, and I found myself in a situation where I had to problem solve and get out of this pickle. I was in the middle of Texas at the time, and I had to literally get the van to an auto body shop, and the auto body shop had, a weeks long fabrication process to make. They had to make the parts and then ship them in for the van. So I was in a hotel room basically for 7 days and just waiting for this van to be done. And it really just taught me, like, I'm supposed to be on this epic journey, right? This is supposed to be like
Right.
a soul searching, like, nothing's gonna go wrong kind of like soul searching journey. And then all of a sudden, like at an instant's notice, like all of a sudden all this stuff is going wrong. And it just really taught me to like slow down and realize, like, I am not in control here. Like,
Mhm.
there are other factors that I am reacting to at all times. And as soon as I start reacting negatively to these things, they just start compounding and getting worse. So I kind of just laughed it off at that point. And it was funny because I would go into the auto body shop like every day to check in and be like, "Hey, is the van ready? Like, hey, did you get the parts? Hey, what's going on?" And I was just like, every day I could feel like a little bit more tension between, like, I was just like, I wanted to get back on the road, but then I had to keep
Mhm.
reminding myself, I'm like, this is out of my control. Like, they have my van. The only option now is to fly
Right.
back home, and I'm certainly not doing that because I'm not out to California yet. And California was kind of like my goal to get to. So just
Wow.
finding out that I wasn't in control of things, finding out that it was me reacting to the situation rather than me controlling the situation.
Well, it's interesting because in life we got to go through different trials, and overcome
Mhm.
adversities because that's the way
Yeah,
we learn. So it sounds like you had to go through stuff like this in order to have these realizations because if everything went perfect, you probably wouldn't have learned a lot of the lessons that helped you along that way. And that's kind of just how life
100%.
is. So it's kind of cool hearing that story of what you realize, how it helped you with kind of having the struggles early on.
Yeah.
All right, so when you got back after this trip, what did you do? Like, how did your life evolve, and what did this
Yeah.
trip do to help you to where you are now?
Well, I mean, Jason, it would be really great if I sat here and told you, that my life was forever changed and I was this completely different person and I was a renewed man and all this stuff, right? It would be like, such a Hollywood movie if that was the case. But I mean, for me, it was more of like a panic almost. It was like back to reality. All these things that obviously I haven't conceptualized the trip at this point because I had just come back, but I started panicking and I was like, my funds are running out. I still had a house I was making payments on while I was traveling. I had a car I was making payments on. It was just this whole flood of reality hitting me all at once that it was just like, hey man, you can't just be on this, frou-frou journey your whole life. Like, you got to come back to reality and you got to put some of these principles that you've learned. And I just started reaching out to people that I knew, and I finally landed in front of someone who worked at the company I'm with now. And I got a role interview for sales, and it just kind of one thing led to another, and it kind of streamlined into me getting hired. So, but it was almost just a whirlwind of emotions coming back and having to realize, like, okay, I was on this trip. I thought this big epic opportunity was going to come my way on this trip. I thought I was going to get this grand return of, like, all this knowledge and wisdom, and none of it happened. So it was very, very humbling, to say the least.
Well, I think if you look at it from what you've told me so far, you did get a lot out of it because what do you
Oh,
think that
100%.
you be well prepared for the person you have to be now and be prepared for the sales, management position that you're in right now without going through all that? It's like it sounds to
Yeah.
me like it's an internal transformation, which is
Oh,
even
for
more
sure.
important than the external physical. So
Yeah,
I
you're
mean, I think
exactly
you did
right.
get a lot out of it, right? And
I
I
think
think that's
I
pretty
think more
cool what you
so I
went
think
through.
more so the initial coming back part
I
was
could see
the
that. Yeah.
was the shell
The
shock.
shock. Yeah.
But the longevity of who I became after that trip, I think was kind of like the pinnacle of it all. It's like it's easy it's been 10 years since I've went on this trip and came back. So it's easy to look back on it now and realize all those things that have changed and manifested into the roles that I've had and the things, the qualities that I've evolved into on this trip, looking
Mhm.
back. But in that moment, I think just being so honest with you, it's like that sheer, like people think they're going on these trips and traveling and doing all these things, they're going to come back, or even people that think they're going to move away and it's going to somehow change their life. It doesn't, because you're always going to be with
Right.
you, and wherever you go,
Exactly. Right.
you're gonna have to put up with you, right? So I think that
Right. The
I
truth.
think
Yeah.
that's honestly one of the biggest takebacks of coming back. So
Yeah. I'll tell you, if you could go back in time
uh-huh.
and change anything about
Mhm.
what you did, is there anything you would change? Would you do anything differently at all?
I don't know if I would have had the wherewithal to do anything differently, honestly, because
Yeah.
it was such a like on a whim, everything just happened, and
Yeah.
it was me making decisions kind of on the fly, right? And I don't think they were supposed to happen any differently.
Yeah.
I think that those things happened for a reason. Like you know, who could have predicted my radiator overheating and me, my engine almost catching fire on the one of the biggest interstates in Texas. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy. But I mean,
That
at
is
the same
crazy.
time, it's like I also got to hike in some of the most beautiful places. I got to be in some of the most serene, beautiful, it was like I was in the book of a National Geographic's. Like I was in a National Geographic magazine waking up every single day. And to come back to reality after something like that, it was just like, okay, now it's time to put the pedal down and figure out what's next after I've had this, solace for a while.
It's curious because it sounds like everything you had dreamed about while you were at that job that you just kind of dreaded going to and overworked and everything. And you were dreaming about traveling, you were dreaming about seeing things. Do you think if you had changed that dream to something else, you would have navigated that way? Like your path would have been different if you had different visions of what it is that you thought life would be like if you didn't have to go to that job?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's the only job I'd ever had at that point. I didn't really know
Wow.
anything different. So, a lot of people have, 7, 8 jobs by the time they're 25, 30.
Hmm.
And I had been there for 10 years. I was, I think, 24 when I left. And I just don't, I couldn't say, honestly. It's one of those things that I guess I often don't think about, because that's really all I knew. I didn't, I'd born
Right.
and raised in
That
the
makes
same
sense.
place. I didn't know anything different. But what I did know is that I would look around me and I would see people having all these experiences, and I would kind of wonder to myself, like, why not me? Like, why am I the one who doesn't get all these opportunities? And really it was because it was my fault. Like I was
Hmm.
literally I was working so much, 60, 70 hours a week, when I had roommates that were going out and partying and having all this fun and doing all these fun things, and I'm just like, that's not for me. I don't want to do those things. So I kind of took a step back and just put my head down and grinded work and realized I was miserable. So
Well, I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for you getting to that mentality, of saying what else is out there and having that
yeah,
exploratory mind and that curiosity and having the
yeah,
willpower to actually make a change, I mean, it's possible you could have been there another decade, in that comfort
right,
safe zone, just
exactly,
doing it because it's all you knew. So you making that bold
100%.
move changed the trajectory of your entire life and who you are as a person. And that is absolutely commendable because the whole point of this, doing this episode with you is to show that you don't have to be stuck. But it does
Yeah,
take, the internal realization that there's more out there. You're
yeah,
you are more. There's a purpose for you, and it's up to you to make that change. And all you have to do,
Yep.
really, it sounds like, is, put the thoughts of what you want in your mind, take the intuitive action, and just have faith that everything is going to unfold. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened
Yeah.
for you. Am I right?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think that, it like you said, it starts with that mentality of the mindset. Like you have to make
Hmm.
the conscious decision to change. And you don't necessarily have to have it figured out of what needs to change. Like maybe
And I think
small little
like
minute
not
things.
trying to control the outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think having a broad picture of what you want changed helps. But
Hmm.
the minor details that happen throughout it as you navigate, those things start to fall in line as you start taking the steps forward, right? So as you start
Right.
walking forward towards what you want, all those things start to kind of fall in place. So,
Yeah. No, it's so true, and it's such a great story. If you could if you could tell people that are listening to this who are on the verge of wanting to kind of make a move like you did, what is some advice to give them? We've talked about a lot, but if you could say maybe one or two things that are really important, what
yeah.
would you say to them?
Um, I would say for me, I'm a planner, in the sense of I want everything to be perfect before I execute something. And I think that
Mhm.
could be one of the worst downfalls to someone going out and wanting to get something for themselves. Because if you sit around long enough, your perfectionism and um, your desire to make things absolutely perfect is going to prevent you from the very thing you're trying to achieve.
So
And
true.
I find, yeah, and I find that started happening to me with this whole trip that I took is, one of those things where it's like, you have people in your ear telling you shouldn't do it, but also, myself internally having to figure out the logistics of everything and how meticulous and how perfect I needed to make them. But then eventually it just was like, okay, I need to stop dragging feet here and just do it, right? So it's just one of those
Yeah.
things. I think that's the biggest thing um, that I would probably recommend somebody is just to start taking action and moving forward on that bigger goal that you had, no matter how small it is. Just start making moves toward it. Because just like when you're investing money, you start putting in, $100 a week on something. Yeah, it seems small at first, but then you get to your first, 50 to 100,000. Now you're compounding harder and harder and harder and harder. And then you get more, more, more. And once that starts compounding, it kind of just takes a life of its own. And then that's where you start riding the wave, as people say.
That's absolutely great advice. And I
Yeah.
know now, with everything that you have gone through, you have a new venture that you're kind of pursuing. And I love what you're doing. I think it's going to be phenomenal. You told me that 10 years ago you would not be a guy who would even be doing this with me right now. And I know
Yeah.
that you're getting ready to start something up where you are going to be in front of the camera. You are going
Yeah.
to be delivering some great sales advice. So give me, like, what do you have going on? Tell the good people.
Yeah, it's a slow burn. I've been for a couple years now, kind of drumming up the after six sales, and basically what it is I want to help salespeople who are you know newly into sales, but also maybe experienced salespeople who maybe feel a little bit lost in their sales career, or maybe just finding their sales voice on the phones and just trying to figure out how they can merge their sales identity with their actual identity. Because I think a lot of times when we get into sales, we start feeling like it's a performance art and we kind of lose ourselves in the scripts that we're given and the processes that we're given. So I think after six sales kind of stemmed from that. It was just trying to figure, like, from my own experience in sales and kind of coming up and not knowing sales and how knowing how bad I was at sales. I had to learn and overcome even more than I did on that trip that I took. It's, when I realized I was really bad at sales, it was really bad. But I got better by realizing it was about me and paying attention to the client. And once I latched on to the identity of listening and making sure I was being tentative to the client, that was kind of where everything unfolded for me. So I want to give back to people the things that I learned over time and the things that I was able to, I was reading podcasts or reading books, listening to podcasts. I was doing everything under the sun to get better, but I wasn't getting better. So for me,
Mhm.
again, to the application part, it was trying to figure out how to apply and move forward rather than just read and be perfect, if that makes sense. And it was
Yeah, that
just,
makes
I
perfect sense.
knew all the things that I was supposed to be doing, but it was my identity and who I was as a person wasn't correlating across my sales. So I think that's kind of the identity of the after six sales. And I kind of wanted to make a play off of, you're always growing and you're always learning. It doesn't start and stop after the 9 to 6 grind, and that's kind of where after six came from.
I absolutely love it. I
Yeah,
think you are the perfect person to be doing something like this, and you're going to
I
help a
appreciate that.
tremendous amount of people. Ryan, this has been phenomenal. I really appreciate your time. Can you tell people like how to find you or the After Six Sales? What
Yeah.
is that going to look like, and how can they reach out to you if they're looking for help?
Yeah, I have a website. Website is after6sales.com. There's also a free sales blog on there as well that I try to write and keep up with at least once a week. You can find me on LinkedIn at After Six Sales and also Ryan Allen on LinkedIn. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you to all of you taking the time to watch this. I hope you got a lot out of it. Really inspirational story. This is the Life Renewal Podcast. I am Jason DiRienzo. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.